The head coach of the Warriors, Steve Kerr, brought to you by the Next Generation 10G Network, only from Xfinity. The future starts now. Good evening, Coach. Thanks for doing it tonight. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, we're fantastic, man. Very, very interesting comments earlier today for sure. And so it brings up all kinds of questions. You know, whenever a team that has set the expectations that you guys have falls short, I think the snap sort of reaction from people is, well, okay, here are all the changes that need to be made. What's your thought on that? Is this an offseason of big changes for the Warriors?
I don't think so. I think it's important for us to look at both what went wrong and also what went right. You know, we really found ourselves in the playoffs, and obviously that comeback against Sacramento was really something. And you know, you look at the Lakers series, and even though they were the better team and they beat us, we weren't that far off when you really look at it. So to me, it's more a case of, you know, let's reassess where we are. Let's everybody get better. Obviously, you know, every offseason you have to make some moves and you know, adjust the roster, and you do some things, but I believe that this team, you know, with this core, still has another run in it, and that means it doesn't mean, you know, an overhaul. It just means let's see what we got.
And part of that another run would be getting bigger contributions from the younger players, particularly Jonathan Kuminga, who seemed to fall out of favor in the postseason, and Moses Moody, who came on late and played well in the postseason. What do you need to see from them, and by proxy, Jordan Poole, in terms of improvement going into next year?
Yeah, I think just continued improvement overall. You know, those guys are so young, and I talk about it all the time, but it's, you know, in the modern age that we live in, everybody wants results right away. But the fact is, you're talking about, you know, JK and Moses, talking about two 20-year-old young guys who only have a couple of years experience in the league. And you're talking about the playoffs at the highest level. And, you know, I thought Moses really came on, and that's why he ended up in the rotation. JK didn't do anything wrong. It's just we had Wiggs and Gary back, and those guys played ahead of him. And it was tougher to find, you know, combinations where JK fit. Once the playoffs started with Gary and Wiggs back. So it's just this is all part of being a young player, is, you know, earning your stripes and making yourself versatile enough to be in multiple lineups and figuring out ways to be effective. And you know, this is all part of the natural growth process.
Steve, I think any rational fan can see the challenges in trying to win right now and developing young guys like that. So I'm sure that's a line that you had to ride often. But now looking back on the season and knowing where those young players are, any regrets, anything you would have done differently in terms of development?
None at all, because, you know, what we did during the course of the season was play the guys who we thought gave us the best chance to win every single night. And, you know, you look at our season, we're 3-7 out of the gates and swimming upstream from the beginning, you know, really, you know, barely in the playoff picture. So we, you know, for most of the year, really, we had to win the last 6 just to secure a playoff spot. So all we were trying to do was just win and get into the playoffs. And that meant for me playing Ty Jerome, playing Anthony Lamb. Those guys they have way more experience than our young guys. And so all of the nuances, the subtle things that help win games, they were better at that stuff than our young guys. And they should be, because those guys have way more experience. And so you develop young guys, and they also earn their minutes, and that's all part of it. And as I said, I thought by the end of the year, Moses had really earned his way into the rotation by what we saw in practice, and that's a good way for this to happen. But it's not like I was standing by some old-fashioned principle of, like, hey, they've got to wait their turn. I was just trying to win games.
And part of that, I think, was precipitated by that slow start. You mentioned 3-7 out of the gate. Was that equal parts championship hangover and also maybe some of the fallout from what happened when Draymond punched Jordan Poole in the preseason? Steve, did we lose you?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm here. I think there were a lot of things going on, and none of them are excuses. They're just facts. But I think going to Japan, this happened to us 5 years ago. We went to China on training camp, and those overseas trips really nullify a lot of the training camp time that you normally have. And so I didn't feel like we were particularly ready to start the season. And then there's no question, that incident hurt our chemistry, and so that was a factor. And then I think, we were trying really hard to play our young guys, and we played some combinations that were a little funky, trying to get a lot of guys minutes, and as a result, we just, we didn't really get into a groove, and then getting off to that slow start meant that we were, as I said, swimming upstream for a while there.
Steve Kerr with us here on Willard and Dibs, 95.7 The Game. Coach, I thought you were very forthcoming earlier today in discussing just that, the way that the preseason incident affected things and the assignment for everybody in the offseason with regard to that. What is your confidence level that Warrior vibe that got lost to a degree this year? What is your confidence level that is recoverable, specific to the relationship to Jordan and Draymond?
Very high, because I know the character and the quality of all the people on this roster. I know the tone that Steph Curry sets in our locker room. I know that Draymond and Jordan were very close. From the minute Jordan arrived, with the Warriors out of Michigan, and they had that Michigan connection and Michigan State rivalry, and Draymond really took him under his wing. They built a relationship that was important to both of them, and so I know all of the parties involved really want us to play well. They really want each other's careers to go well, and but it does require work, and that's going to be part of it.
I know that this is probably an above your pay grade question, but the sense that you gave earlier was that Draymond and Steph and Clay are all going to return. Does this mean that Draymond Green's going to get some sort of an extension, or can you see him coming back and just playing on that player option?
Well, I didn't say they're going to return. I said I expect them to.
Okay.
It's not my job. I coach the team. Bob and Joe and our front office, they put together the roster. But I know how all those guys feel, and I know that everybody feels very strongly that we want Draymond back. So to me, it's just an expectation that we've had a really good thing going for a decade. We feel like those guys all have a lot left in the tank, and so I expect everybody to be back. But as we're finding out in the NBA, who knows anything anymore? I mean, you got Hall of Fame coaches getting fired, championship coaches getting fired, all kinds of trades during the season. So you never discount anything in this league anymore.
Steve, I think it's interesting, actually, with so much talk about Draymond's opt-out and Bob Myers' future, that there's been very little talk this year about your future, because I know that needs to be addressed at some point as well. What is your hope for yourself and your role over the next 5 years?
Well, I love coaching, and I love living in the Bay Area. I love coaching this team. So I don't have any plans to go anywhere. But I'm also, as I said, well aware of how this works. And, these aren't lifetime appointments. So you just, you do the best job you can. And, when time comes necessary, you assess where you are, and you have those discussions, and you figure out what's next. So I think, I'm perfectly happy. I've got a year left on my contract. The organization has far more pressing issues to handle right away. So this is not something that I'm concerned about at this point.
When you talked about the team maxing out and maybe not being a, quote, championship team, when you look at the way the postseason ended, so close with the Lakers, Jordan Poole with a shot to win Game 1, Game 4, nip and tuck, back and forth, where do you see that the team maybe fell just a little bit short of getting to that next round?
Well, when you think about what the regular season means, we bypassed a lot of that process. We got Gary Payton back with 7 games left in the regular season. Wiggs was gone for a couple of months. The lineups that we were playing against the Lakers had barely played together all year long. So, there were a lot of adjustments going on back and forth in the series. Normally, when you have a whole regular season together and you can see all these lineups and you can build, rhythm and see what certain lineups look like down the stretch and in, crucial parts of the game, then there's a much more of a comfort level between the players when you're trying to close games. And you look at the series, 6-game series, games 1 and 4 were really the keys, and those were, won by the Lakers down the stretch where they out-executed us. So that stuff all happens in the regular season. You think back a year ago, we beat Memphis in a very similar series to this Lakers series, 4-2, a couple close games right down the wire, but we won those games. And that's the difference between maybe winning a championship and going out in the second round. And a lot of that stuff you have to establish during the course of the season, and I don't think we ever did that.
It's interesting, Steve, because, because of the pedigree, because of what you just mentioned, how close you were, there's been a lot of attention to the comments that you and others made right after the game about this not being a championship team and that you maxed out. What are your thoughts on that? Like, when did you sort of sense that maybe this wasn't that level of a team?
Well, maybe when we went 11-30 on the road.
Yeah.
I mean, championship teams don't go 11-30 for a season on the road. So, in my mind, what we tried to do was really piece it together at the end. And find what we had last year. And we did that by getting Wiggs back from his absence and trading for Gary, because that's what we knew we had a year ago. Those two guys were such integral parts of our championship. And so we tried to scramble, and, we wanted Gary at the trade deadline, and then he had the injury. And so he only played a handful of games at the end of the regular season. But I loved our guys' fight and their connection down the stretch. We win 6 in a row. We get to the playoffs. We come back from 2-0 to beat Sacramento. We did a lot of great things, and I'm proud of the guys for that. But again, to expect to win 4 rounds in the playoffs under those circumstances where we really didn't earn, a whole season worth of chemistry and connection, I don't think championship teams are made out of that type of situation.
Thinking in terms of next year, if in fact Draymond does opt in and you guys do agree to, quote, run it back, I guess Dante DiVincenzo is the only other piece that would have to opt in or out, and JaMychal and Andre Iguodala are going to be gone. But do you think that this roster with maybe a vet min addition can be championship caliber next year?
Absolutely. Like I said, we were one of the best teams in the league by the end of the season, but not good enough to beat the best. And so we're close. But, we put together a full season next year and knock on wood, with good health, some continued development from our young guys, maybe a couple of moves roster wise, then I think we're right back in the hunt.
Steve Kerr with us here on 95.7 The Game, Willard and Dibs. Hey, Steve, there have been some reports that have at least sort of been in the neighborhood of feeling like Jonathan Kuminga is upset, and even the report that if a role is not going to be promised next year that's bigger than this year, then he might want to be elsewhere. Can you expand on all this for the fans? Like, is Jonathan upset? What is the state of that feeling between him and the organization?
Yeah, we've had several conversations, during the playoffs. We had our exit interviews the last few days, so JK and I visited. Is he upset that he didn't play? I think he's frustrated that he didn't play. But I would hope anybody in his situation would be frustrated with not playing. I mean, these guys are competitors, and they're dying to be out there. And I didn't put him out there much, so he has every right to be frustrated. But there's anything beyond that is just speculation. We had a great conversation with Bob Myers, and we're excited about JK coming back next year. I think he's excited to be coming back, and it's all just continued growth. And I've said this a million times, but Steph and Draymond, they each told me when I asked them at dinner, a few months back, I said, how long before you felt like you could impact winning in the NBA? And Steph said his third year, Draymond said his fourth year. Huh. And these are guys who went to college for 3 and 4 years. So you're really talking about, they were 24, 25 years old, with full college experience and multiple years of NBA experience before they felt like they could impact winning. So, I'm going to reiterate it. This stuff does not happen overnight. And, JK had a really good year. He helped us win a lot of games. He replaced Wiggs when Wiggs was out. He did a great job. And then the playoffs are, they're a different animal. And you get Wiggs and Gary back, and suddenly there's a lot of depth out there. And, you're going to have a harder time, making an impact at such a young age with so little experience. There's so many nuances in every single play, and all these young guys have a lot to learn, and that will come with time, but we can't rush it.
Coach, I know you were asked this probably 100 times early in the season, but I think after the season, maybe your answer will be, have different clarity with people. When people said, what was the difference between last year's team and this year's team during the season, right? You were relying on those young guys in ways that you didn't last year. But with Gary and Andrew coming back to the team, as you've detailed, like, in the end, what was the real difference between last year's run and this year? And how much of it was just that small loss of culture that you've talked about?
Well, the regular season matters. That's where you really build momentum. And you think back to last year's championship year, we started 18-2, had great vibes right from the beginning. And even though we hit some rough patches, we knew who we were. We knew what we were capable of. We never got to that point this year because of the way the season started, just the nature of the season itself and the circumstances. So we have to start from the beginning next year and really establish who we are. And I have no doubt that we can do that again.
Trying to do that, does it run counter or anathema to being able to develop the young players, or is there a way for these young players to develop without getting the kind of minutes that fans were clamoring for, especially for Jonathan Kuminga this year?
Well, you watched it with Moses Moody. Midway through the season, he was not in the rotation because he was struggling in practice every day. And when we would put him out there in games, he was a half count behind. But what he did in practice every day over the course of the season, he kind of had a breakthrough with a couple weeks left in the regular season. We could see it in our scrimmages, and it was like the light switch went on, and that's why he was out there in the playoffs, diving on the floor and loose balls, being early in rotations, boxing people out, because it clicked. Something clicked. And that's the process. That's how it has to happen. But for me as a coach, like, I've got to win games, and especially a year like this where we're on the edge of the playoff race. Everything we did all year long was with the idea to win that night's game, and then the development happens, during practice, during individual work, and then watching film and watching our games. And like I said, you saw it with Moses, and I think J.K. has a similar breakthrough coming, but he still has some work to do.
Steve, I'll be honest with you. There's a little bit of an uneasy feeling amongst the fan base about the Bob Myers situation. The longer it goes, what have you had a conversation with him recently about where he's sitting?
Yeah, Bob and I talk all the time, and he's a great friend. Not just a business partner, but a great friend, and he's still trying to make up his mind. And these jobs are difficult. They're difficult on families and relationships. They're never easy for anybody. And so Bob is such a practical person and a balanced person. He's going to go through the process. He's going to let the season, just be behind us for a little bit, so he's got a chance to breathe and think, and then ultimately he'll make his decision. So whatever happens, obviously I will support him, and he's a great friend, as I said, great executive, actually incredible GM. So I'm hoping he's back, but we'll see.
We are also hoping, because the two of you provide quite a tandem of great interviews on our station. So selfishly, we want Bob back as well. Yeah. And have you thought at all about a return to the front office, maybe not on Bob's heels, but in terms of your future in the association, or are you just comfortable as a coach and then not thinking about the front office at all?
No, I love coaching. That's what I'm locked in on right now. I'm already thinking about next year and ways we're going to get better, and I'm excited. I think sometimes losing can offer clarity, and it can be an impetus for change, for positive change. And I know that I am already, and it's probably unhealthy to be thinking this way, but I'm already gearing up for next year and thinking about, ways we can improve and get back to where we want to be.
Any chance you guys will package the 19th and 49th pick to move up for Wembanyama?
I'm pretty sure I could get fined or something for mentioning anything about that guy.
I don't think you can. Yeah, he's not on a team. Fire away. He's the only guy you can talk about.
They want to fine everybody, so I'm going to avoid commenting on that.
All right.
Here's one player you can talk about, because I know you're coaching the Olympic team in 2024. Any chance that the chef, has he been lobbying for a spot, or do you feel like maybe he's past his prime?
Yeah. Past his prime.
I had to get one laugh out of you, Steve. Come on.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. The Olympic conversation hasn't happened yet, but rest assured it will.
Well, speaking of Steph, he's such a standard. It feels like all of the questions all year long are about everybody else. But I got a Steph question for you, especially because he had that out-of-character Game 7 speech before you went up to Sacramento. And we know the inner competitor he is, even when he doesn't show it outwardly. The throwing of the mouthpiece this year, like, are you sensing maybe something a little bit different in him in terms of a frustration level, or just his reaction to falling short this year?
He's just a competitor. He's the same guy, whether we win or lose, and because we lost, he's frustrated, and he wants to make sure that we get better. And that's any frustration you see, that's been there because of his competitiveness. That's always been in there. It's exposed when you lose. That's the main thing.
Yeah, and the nerves were rubbed raw for all of us, especially losing to that Laker outfit. Well, Steve, hopefully you're able to get some R&R in the offseason, and hopefully, too, this isn't the last time we get to talk to you, Coach.
We'll talk soon, I'm sure. Just let me know.
Okay.
What are you doing next Tuesday?
Yeah, what are you doing tomorrow?
well.
P.S. I'm busy.
Yeah, Steve, go kick your feet up and get a glass of wine or something, man.
Right.
Thank you so much.
All right, appreciate it. See you.
All right, there
Thanks,
he goes.
Steve.
There's Steve Kerr.